Hello, everyone, from the Matt Morris Digital Studio here in Fresno. This is the Beem and Dean Show, episode 61, with the sports director of KC24, CBS 47, and the voice of the Fresno City College Rams, Scott Bemis. I'm Dean Shiro. Scotty, got a big college football weekend coming again on this Thursday. Got the World Series starting tomorrow night in Toronto. Canada versus the United States. Toronto and
I don't know how is that the headline?
No,
Canada
I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't
know. I think the Blue Jays are kind of adopting that mantra a little bit.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
So hopefully the Dodgers can be America's team. We got a big game at Valley Children's on Saturday, a day game. You got San Diego State coming in, Sean Lewis and the boys. A lot of stuff going on. Any opening thoughts?
Yeah, Saturday should be fun out at Valley Children's Stadium. Rare 12:30 kick. Weather looks pretty good, right? No excuse for the fans. Get in those seats. I'm sure it's going to be a great crowd with a blackout there. Not the greatest time to have a day game when you have a blackout, right? You're almost trying to time that blackout for a night game, but hey, what are you going to do?
Well, maybe he'll show up nice on TV. You never know, because it'll be daylight. The black should show up pretty good. So
the black unis are still going to look cool. They got these cool black helmets with an old school logo that's on the helmets from way back in the day with regards to the Dogs, probably from the days they were playing at Ratcliffe Stadium, going way back.
Yeah.
So it should be a lot of fun, and then obviously Jeff Tedford going in at halftime. That should be really cool.
Very cool.
Man, I'll tell you, that's a big football game too for Fresno State.
Yeah. Big stretch coming up here, right?
When you look at the conference standings, and Dean, I kind of hinted at this, but do you think head coach Matt Entz maybe feeling just a little bit of pressure, not only because this area expects a winner, but you've got this coach about 3.5 hours down in LA who a lot of people wanted to be the head coach, who is suddenly turning around the Bruins into a legitimate football program.
3-0. How about that? So they have a very, very difficult game this week. They go to Bloomington, Indiana. I don't know if we'll see if they stay 4-0. But yeah, good point, Scotty. Absolutely. Speaking of coaching, it's time to come in hot. All right, Scotty, back to football. You and I were trying to figure out topics for coming in hot this week, and we both came up with some coaching decisions that kind of made us scratch our bald heads. Let's start with the Monday night game in Seattle, and we're about almost at the 2-minute warning when D'Amico Ryans decides to pull something out of his bag. Scotty, fill us in.
Yeah, I don't think this, in the end, determined whether the Texans won or lost the football game. More than likely, we're going to lose this game either way. But it just is, it's so hard to watch sometimes when you're seeing something happen at home and the play is obvious, to me at least, as I'm watching it. So let me set the stage for you. I think there's 2:04 on the clock. The Texans have just scored to cut it to an 8-point game. Now, you could have argued that maybe they should have gone for 2 there, but I can understand maybe you take the extra point first, and then if you're able to score again, maybe try to tie it up with a 2-point conversion. But what happens here is you need to get the ball back, obviously. You got 2:04. You have one timeout left.
Only one timeout. Remember that, folks.
So there are 2 options on the table here, in my opinion. Clear as day as I'm watching this game. You either attempt the onside kick because you're thinking, all right, we only have one timeout. Best case scenario, even if we get a stop defensively, we're going to get the ball back with about 1:10 on the clock probably. The other option, which I don't have a problem with if they want to do it, is to kick it deep but you can't kick it in an area where it can be returned.
Yes, the clock cannot start.
In this situation, right? Because you can't have a play that lasts 4 seconds, because then that extra timeout that you're getting with the 2-minute warning, which is going to allow you to get the ball back with, say, 1:10, 1:15 left on the clock, is suddenly not going to be there if the Seahawks take off 4 seconds off the call. So if you're going to, my thought was, if you don't feel like you have a kicker who can kick it out of bounds in that situation, I don't know what Fairbairn's leg is at that point, you just got to kick it out of bounds and take it and give it to the Texans at the 40. But if you're going to do that, you might as well try the onside kick at that point, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So what do the Texans do? They just do a normal kickoff. It's returned to about the 30, and the clock goes down to about 1:58 on the play. So that timeout you were going to get, that extra timeout, is now wiped away because the kickoff took us down to the 2-minute warning.
Yeah.
And in the end, the Seahawks run the ball twice, and they
take a knee.
Did they end up getting a first down? They might have ended up getting a first down anyways.
But the bottom line is, mathematically, they were pretty much
either
dead.
way.
They were dead.
The Texans were only going to get the ball back with, say, 15 seconds or something like that
if
left.
That.
If that. And it's just, I just don't understand. I mean, these coaches, they've been coaching football for so long, or even if they're not aware, there should be somebody on the staff who is aware of this situation, right? A clock management guy, an analyst guy, this and that. I mean, that is the exact wrong thing to do at that moment in time. And you're making all this money, and this is something that you can control. You can't always control whether a quarterback throws a bad pick or fumbles are a little bit haphazard at times, but you can control clock management and decisions like this. And I know it was kind of a minor thing, but it really stuck out to me that, wow, I don't, is D'Amico Ryans, is he the right guy for this job? If he can't realize that is the exact wrong thing to do at that point in time.
Well, you completely gave you took your team's chance away from winning the game at that point. Like you said, 2:04 left on the clock. You use 6 seconds on the kickoff. Now all of a sudden the 2-minute warning has already been used. You've got one timeout and they've got 3 downs to work with. At the most, you're getting 10 seconds. Kick the onside kick. Just give it a shot. If you don't get the onside, then listen, you gave it your best shot. You gave it everything you got. D'Amico Ryans, I don't know what you were thinking. Let's go to another NFL coach here. I got to go to Sean Payton really quick. So Sean Payton in his post-game interview was talking about Jackson Dart and kind of took a shot at his old quarterback in Denver, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson responded on Wednesday. He didn't like it at all, called him classless, and there was no need for that. So what's your take, Scotty, on Sean Payton?
Well, basically, Sean Payton said that, he was talking to John Mara, I think one of the owners of the Giants, but before the game, and that he said, I was hoping that they would wait to make this quarterback change until after they played us, basically taking kind of a veiled shot at Russell Wilson.
A nice veiled shot.
That they would have much preferred to play Russell Wilson is kind of what he was intimating. I don't know. Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, they've kind of got something there. They do not get along. They do not like each other clearly, and I think this is hard for Russell Wilson to do this because I think one thing Russell Wilson has always been good at, right, is being the PR guy, being the quarterback who kind of doesn't get too high and too low. And, no matter your opinion of him as a football player, he's always seems to be a pretty stand-up guy.
Yeah, he's got a really good image. Him and his wife, they're very out there. They have a lot of charities and stuff. They do a lot of positive things in the communities they live in. He did not like this at all. And, how do you feel about coaches taking maybe their dirty laundry sometimes out in public?
Well, this one seemed totally unnecessary because, I watched the soundbite and he pretty much had finished the soundbite, and then you could tell he just kind of added this in here almost as a little dig at Russell Wilson. Something went down there when Russell was with Sean Payton in Denver. I mean, we kind of know what happened in a football sense, right? He ended up getting benched, I think, by the end of that year. But I think there's some other stuff maybe that went down that we don't know about between those two. Sean Payton's always been... he's out there, with his statements. Like, he doesn't really pull any punches. And, one thing I'll say about Sean Payton, he never shies away from stuff after he says it. Right. He doesn't come back later and apologize for it or anything like that. No. And that's who you're getting. You're getting brash Sean Payton at that. But this one just felt kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. It's whether you want to call it dirty laundry or what we call in the television business, airing our color bars on television. We just don't do that. We try to keep everything hidden when it comes to that stuff. Let's go to another coach who has been a little public on one of his players. Let's go to the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski. I don't know if he meant to do this or not, but he kind of took a shot at his 5th round pick, Shedeur Sanders. So obviously we know about the quarterback situation in Cleveland. Joe Flacco was the starter, and then they let Joe Flacco go to the Bengals, and now it's Dylan Gabriel. One of the reporters in the Cleveland media asked about, because Kevin Stefanski said that Dylan Gabriel was getting first team snaps even when Flacco was there. So they asked about Shedeur. Is he getting first team snaps? And basically, Stefanski said, no, he's not getting any first team snaps. Dylan Gabriel needs all the snaps he can get and all this. And it's just one of those things where he probably could have done the same thing and just said, that's an internal matter. I really don't want to talk about that. What we do in the team. Shedeur is competing, which he did say something to the effect that Shedeur is getting snaps, just not with the first team. So he is getting snaps in practice, though. But your thoughts again on, it seems like you just kind of creating a situation he really doesn't have to. Your thoughts on that? We all know Shedeur is a public guy, but...
Well, I think the hard part for the Browns right now and Kevin Stefanski with having Shedeur Sanders on your roster, and I think this is one of the reasons that we saw Shedeur slip as far as he did in the draft, is that he really is a borderline practice squad quarterback at this point, right? That's really his role on the Browns, whether you think that's fair or unfair. That's really what his role is. And usually we're not talking about those quarterbacks very much at weekly press conferences and this and that. But because of how high profile Shedeur Sanders is, he gets asked about Shedeur Sanders all the time, right? And everything he says about him gets dissected one way or another. Probably unnecessary, but I didn't see this, clip from Stefanski. I'm guessing that he was just answering a question about whether he's getting reps or not, and he was honest with it. As a member of the media, I can appreciate a coach at least being honest with that and saying he's not, there to get reps. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what to make of that or what to make of the Browns situation in general over there. I'm not sure why they ended up taking Shedeur Sanders with the way things have played out.
Great question.
Yeah,
it's a great question, Scott.
I mean, well, if you're going to take Dylan Gabriel, if you don't take Dylan Gabriel, then okay, you can take Shedeur Sanders, and he can be that rookie quarterback that you're trying to develop.
Right.
But why take two of them?
Right, and not just that, but they also had Kenny Pickett. And they also had Deshaun Watson on the roster. It's one of those situations, regardless of how you feel about Shedeur, it was an interesting take. I just wanted to kind of get.
I will say one more thing about coaches, because we heard Coach Tomlin, mention Joe Flacco in his press conference and kind of calling out the Browns GM. What is he doing? I don't know. I didn't like that from Mike Tomlin, just because to me he's almost setting himself up, giving himself an excuse for losing the football game, which they ended up doing.
Right.
And let's be honest, Dean. I mean, I want your honest answer.
Okay.
When Joe Flacco was traded, from the Browns to the Bengals, I was surprised they even got anything for him. That he was worthy of a 5th-round pick.
I was a little surprised too.
I figured that's somebody who just gets released at this point. And so the fact that the Browns were able to get a 5th-round pick for him at that point, I was like, okay, I don't blame the Browns at all. They're in rebuilding mode.
Right.
If you can pick up, I think it's a 5th-round pick that they got.
Yeah, I believe so.
If you can pick up a 5th-round pick at that point for Joe Flacco, he's not your future.
No.
You're kind of going nowhere.
But I will say this, though, Scott, he is much better than Jake Browning.
Hey, you put Joe Flacco in the right situation, he might be able to have success.
Right.
But I'm saying in Cleveland, even with Joe Flacco, they're not going anywhere.
No, I know, but still, I mean, with Jake Browning, they were drowning. At least now they've got a pulse. Now they've got the Jets coming in this week. They can go two in a row, baby.
It's given life, and I think Joe Flacco's a cool story with what's happened. I'm going to wait and see, because I'll be interested to see if he's able to maintain this, this level. I mean, very different from going from the Browns offense. Doesn't have a lot of weapons there. Suddenly you're in that Bengal offense.
No, I get it.
And you got Chase and you got Higgins and all those guys.
Hey, he's also a fighting Delaware Blue Hen, so let's go easy on that, all right? So let's get into some of these college games we got this week. We don't have a huge slate of great games, but we got a couple good ones. We're going to start right here in the Central Valley. Fresno State, San Diego State for the milk can, right? Am I right? Is that
the old oil can?
The oil can. Sorry, milk can's Boise, right?
Yes.
Oil can. So we're playing for the oil can. 12:30 start. Just give us a little preview on this game, a little bit more from what you've learned from insider and practice this week.
Well, I was just talking to Jackson Moore about this a little bit. And, one thing that could be kind of problematic for the Dogs, it looks like at least early in the week, Kavion Thunderbird was not practicing.
Okay.
And so he suffered some sort of injury against Colorado State, and I think he was held out of the second half of that game or missed the second half of that game. So the Dogs might not be with Kavion Thunderbird. Looks like they at least are getting back one of their receivers, Ezekiel Abbott. Looks like he's coming back. But San Diego State, Fresno State, on paper at least, this looks like a defensive slugfest here. Although I will say this about San Diego State. Suddenly, they have an offense that's come to life for them under Sean Lewis.
Yeah.
Sean Lewis, offensive coach, right?
Yes, and very much so.
They've got a transfer in from Michigan, Jaden Denigal, right? Wasn't playing at Michigan. Now he's in there. They've got a real playmaker at receiver in Jordan Napier. Now, the one thing about San Diego State, they do have a couple impressive wins, I would say. They went to Northern Illinois, beat them 6-3.
That's what I mean. Offensively, like you said, like they have moments and flashes of greatness, and then they win a game 6-3, right?
Right. And so we'll see, because I will say this, their Mountain West competition to this point hasn't been that great.
No.
Colorado State at home. And Nevada on the road.
Right.
But they've just blown the doors off of those two opponents. And their defense, one of these rare defenses, Dean. I gave them out as a sleeper earlier in the year.
Yes, you did.
Preseason.
Yes, you did.
In the Mountain West to possibly win the Mountain West. And because I was looking at it in one of the preview mags, it said they had 10, I believe, returning starters on defense. How rare is that in college football these days?
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, and so they have the preseason defensive player of the year, defensive end. They got an outstanding corner. So the Dogs are going to have their hands full. I certainly think at home in that environment, the blackout, everything else, the Dogs are going to be riding kind of a wave of energy in that first half.
Right.
So I expect this to be a tight game.
Yeah, coming off a bye and a loss.
Coming off a loss. They're going to be chomping at the bit to get back out there. So hopefully that first half energy can translate into a lead because the Dogs need to play from in front. I mean, we've seen that.
Right.
And they need to get this running game going because San Diego State, they've got guys who can rush the quarterback.
Absolutely.
They can sack the quarterback. And so if you're Fresno State, you got to establish that running game early so that E.J. Warner can work that play action game. And if you have a lead, you can kind of make that happen. If you fall behind, like you did at Colorado State, and suddenly you got to throw the ball 40 or 50 times, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Let's go to another team that you had in your preseason. We're going to the Big 12 now. They've stubbed their toe a few times, but we got Kansas State heading to Kansas, the Sunflower State matchup here. We kind of just laid it out. Both teams have been disappointing, especially Kansas State, but they've kind of turned it on recently. Obviously, it's a border war. It's an in-state battle. So any thoughts really quick on this game?
Well, I'm smart about some picks like San Diego State. Not so smart on the Kansas pick. I think my eyes kind of lied to me a little bit by how they played against Fresno State. I came back from that trip really impressed with the Jayhawks, and they've had a couple moments here and there where they've looked pretty good this season. But overall, yeah, it hasn't been great. Now, the Big 12 is tough. The Big 12 is tough week in and week out. It's a big rivalry game, like you said. I think Kansas State has just totally owned that series over the years. And so, Kansas, I think there's a big long winning streak or something like that going on for Kansas State in that series.
The game's in Lawrence at the newly revised David Booth Stadium, which Scott was at.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Kansas State has kind of turned around their season. Boy, they looked for dead after that loss at Arizona State earlier in the year.
Yeah.
I mean, Avery Johnson, their quarterback, he looked lost out there.
Yeah.
But suddenly, the last few weeks, I know you watch a lot of more Big 12 football than I do.
No, but I mean, they started with that horrible performance against Iowa State and Ireland, and it just kind of progressed and got worse. They lost to Army at home. Chris Kleiman's a really good coach, and he was one of my sleeper coaches of the year, and it's just been disappointing. But they have kind of turned it around. They got their running back, Dylan Edwards, back, and they're healthier. But we'll see. This is going to be a tough battle on the road. It's going to be interesting to see. I think Kansas is about a 2.5-point underdog at home, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go to the SEC really quick. We don't have a lot of great games there, but we got one interesting one. Two ranked teams. We got Missouri traveling to play Diego Pavia and the Vanderbilt Commodores. So, Vanderbilt obviously had that tough loss at, Alabama, but
Diego strike the Heisman
they
post,
also
right?
beat LSU last week in Nashville. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Vandy's a fun story. It's a fun story. I know there's a lot of Diego haters out there. A couple of them in my sports department, Dylan Morgan and Angelique Martinez.
They're Alabama grads.
Alabama grads, and they're not as big a fans as some are of Diego Pavia. Vandy, I would love to see them keep winning, Dean, just because Vandy being good is a cool story.
It is.
Right? It's a really cool story because we thought they would be kind of the doormat of the SEC for years and years and years to come.
Right.
And they're legit.
Yeah.
I mean, they're absolutely legit. They're, when I turned on that Alabama Vandy game, I think that's the thing that jumped out to me the most about it was that there was no physical difference between those two teams. Like, Alabama had some skill position talent that really shined. They got a great quarterback and this and that. And it was really a couple turnovers that turned that game by Pavia.
Right.
But Vandy, you used to see teams just kind of impose their will on Vandy.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Tennessees. That's not the case anymore.
No, they passed the eyeball test now. Clark Lee's done a great job with that program. So it's going to be an interesting game. Let's go back to the Big 12 again. We've got undefeated BYU traveling to Ames, Iowa, and playing Iowa State. Iowa State's coming off a tough loss in Boulder against Colorado. So what are your thoughts on this game, Scott?
Well, I did pick up, I told you, BYU before that Utah game last week to win the Big 12 at a really good number. I think it was like 14-1 or something.
That's a
like
really,
that
really
at
good
that
number.
Point. So they're
with
still
an undefeated team. Yes.
So I'm gonna be rooting for BYU there. I will say this: that's a tough spot for BYU. Iowa State's coming off a bye.
Right.
I think they're coming off a loss, and they've got 2 losses in the Big 12.
A bye and a loss.
Yeah.
They lost in Boulder, then had the bye last week. Yes.
And BYU, meantime, coming off a rivalry game, huge win at home over Utah.
Yes.
Tough spot for the Cougars there. Iowa State's a short favorite. That's going to be one of those where BYU's ranked, I believe. Iowa
They
State's
are.
Not.
Oh, yeah, no, they're very much
but
ranked.
Iowa State's going to be ranked over BYU. So that would be a game that, generally speaking, I think I have them as a pick, right? I think I took Iowa State.
We're going to look at that shortly, but I got one more game really quick. Texas A&M with their highest ranking since 1995. They are number 3 in the country, undefeated. Now they travel to Death Valley and play LSU, coming off the loss to Vandy. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, this is funny. I mean, obviously, incredibly difficult place to play. I'm assuming that's a night game, Texas A&M LSU.
I believe it is. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll check.
Yeah. But LSU, obviously, very difficult to go into LSU and win a game. So if Texas A&M is able to do that, they really announce their presence as maybe the favorite in the SEC if they win this game, in my opinion. I mean, they're undefeated right now. They're 7-0. They're rolling. They got a great quarterback in Marcel Reed. They're putting up some points on that side. Kind of won a shootout last week at Arkansas. But if you go into LSU and beat the Tigers in that environment, to me, you're the favorite at that point to win the SEC. LSU's been a weird team. They got a great defense, or at least we thought they had a great defense early in the season. Some teams are scoring a few more points on them suddenly, and Garrett Nussmeier, I'm a fan. I was a fan of his coming into the year, but it's just not translating consistently to big points from them. Occasional splash play here or there.
Right.
But the consistency hasn't been there from that LSU offense. Yeah,
6:30 p.m. Central Time game. So let's get in really quick. We're kind of running short on time. Got our dogs of the week. I'll go first. There weren't a lot to choose from this week. I think you have the play on this game as well. Give me Memphis at home plus 4.5 against South Florida.
The other team coming off a bye, I believe, and a loss.
A loss. No, they lost that game to UAB.
Yeah.
And Chris Mortensen's son. Yes. Remember we talked about that on Monday's show.
No, that's a good pick, team.
And then what about yours?
My underdog of the week, here's how I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Mississippi State at home against Texas. Getting 7 points, but 225 on the money line. Again, dogs of the week were kind of teams that we think could win outright. Did you see the numbers from Texas last week? They got outgained 395 to 179 in that win at Kentucky.
They really should have lost that game, Scott.
Very fortunate. Kentucky, 26 first downs in that game. Texas, only 8.
Yeah.
I think it catches up with Texas finally here. And I like Mississippi State as my dog of the week.
SEC Road, very tough. So let's go to the NFL. We're just going to preview one game of the week that we both kind of like. I'm going to go with Cowboys at Broncos. The Cowboys coming off a really, really big win against the Commanders at home. Seem like they're rolling a little bit. They seem a lot better than a 3-3-1 team at this point. And then the Broncos coming off that miracle comeback win at home against the Giants last week. They were down 19-0. Came back and win. So I think that's a game that I'm really kind of looking forward to and seeing if Bo Nix can, maybe not just look great in the fourth quarter, maybe look good for 4 quarters, and then see what Dak Prescott looks like on the road. So what is your game?
Well, sometimes easier to look better against that Cowboys defense now.
I guess so.
I'm going to link 2 games together, but it's going to really be 2 teams that I'm keeping an eye on. So the Ravens and Texans. The Ravens host the Bears this week. The Texans host the 49ers. The Ravens are 1-5. Not sure about Lamar's status. I think he might be playing this week, but not 100% sure. Okay. The Texans are 2-4, hosting the Niners. Their backs are against the wall. Both these teams, who were preseason, we probably thought were going to be playoff teams in the AFC, the Ravens and the Texans, seasons are kind of on the line in these games here this week, in my opinion. And so those are 2 games I'm going to be watching: Bears, Ravens, 49ers, Texans.
All right, sounds good. Let's get into our money plays. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't do this very often, but we told you so. If you guys would have watched Monday's show and taken our plays, Scott and I combined, let's show them real quick. Look at 1 through 4 for me, and look at number 1 for Scott here. Here it comes. Boom. You would have won $205 if you would have bet the same amount of money that we did on these games. If you would have bet more, you would have won even more. So we gotta pat each other on the back here, Scotty. We did pretty good. I gotta give us a shout out. So
I'm not patting myself too much on the back here because still I did start out with $1,000 this month, and as you saw, my account was dwindling until Monday.
But we work hard on this, you guys. We really do. So like I said, let's start with Scott's stuff again. We're gonna go back because he's got 3 pending games here. He won on the Mariners Blue Jays. It was kind of a little touch and go. We were kind of laughing with each other because they got to that 7-run mark, and then they had runners on, meaning was it the Mariners that had runners on? I'm trying to remember.
I think no, it was the Blue Jays right after they had taken the lead.
The Blue Jays had runners on, I believe, in the 8th inning, and the Mariners somehow got out of it with a double play.
It was looking like
Josh Naylor.
It was looking like it was going to be another bad
but
beat
it cashed.
For me. Yeah,
so
it ended up cashing.
Go over those 3 plays real quick.
Yeah, as we mentioned, we each start with $1,000 each month. It's a contest between Dean and I to see who can end up with more money. I've been struggling early in the month to get a win on Monday, so hopefully I'm carrying some momentum now.
Yes.
Dean liked Memphis as their underdog play of the week. I like it as well. Coming off a huge, humiliating loss at home. Now they're at home against South Florida. They lost, I believe, at UAB. That was a kind of a wild score. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, no,
but
I
they
didn't
get
either.
South Florida coming in. I like Memphis to bounce back there. Already talked about Iowa State coming off a bye, welcoming BYU off a big win last week. Not the greatest spot for BYU. Take Iowa State on the money line there. And then Washington State, kind of under the radar team.
Playing much better than they did earlier this year.
Yeah, they're under 500. I think they're 3-4 this season.
Right.
But they've gone on the road in back-to-back weeks and nearly won at Auburn.
Right, thank you.
Was it Auburn?
They went Auburn, then they went to Virginia.
No, it was at Ole Miss.
Ole Miss and Virginia.
At Ole Miss and then at Virginia. Nearly won both those games. And so now they welcome Toledo, who's playing a random game against Washington State in the middle of their MAC conference schedule. Doesn't feel like the greatest spot for Toledo. So I'm going to take Washington State there. Also, last second, I'm also going to take UCLA plus 25.5 here at home against Indiana. If you made the line on that game preseason, I don't know. It's maybe a 10-point spread. Now it's 25.5.
Okay.
UCLA's got something going. I don't know what it is, but if you're giving me 25.5 right now with that group and Tim Skipper, I'm going to take it.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to take the Steelers at home, getting points.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers against the Packers.
All right.
You know he's going to want to play well in that game. Packers have been a little bit kind of up and down.
Okay.
So the Steelers plus 3. 2 more picks for
We
me.
will add those ones in for Monday. So here's what I did again. Recapping Monday. Again, I've got the pending on the futures still on the Dodgers. Fingers crossed there. Blake Snell on the mound Friday night. So those number 1 through 4 all hit. So the Blue Jays won that game 7. The Lions and Seahawks both won the money line and the spread on those games. So that was great. And then I got lucky on the NHL as well. I needed the Jets to score a third period goal, but that one came through. Number 5 lost and number 6 still pending because those games, as we tape this on a Wednesday night, are still going. But look at that, 12-14 so far with 1,000.
Good
so
job.
We keep rolling. So what do I do instead of just sitting on it? Let's throw 9 more out there. So I don't really have a whole lot of time. I got about a minute and a half, but give me the Chargers tomorrow night at home after that disappointing loss to Indianapolis last week. Short week, but they're playing the Minnesota Vikings. So give me
So you're
them.
buying that down to 2.5.
I bought it down to 2.5. I think it was 3 or 3.5. I bought it down and took a little less. I took minus 160 compared to like minus 140, so it was worth it. And then a $20 NBA parlay for Thursday night. Give me the Pacers plus 8.5 points. This is an NBA Finals rematch against Oklahoma City, coming off that double overtime thriller on Tuesday night against Houston. And then I bought the Warriors up to plus 4.5, even though they got that win against LA. Now they've got. They got the Joker coming in.
I know we're running
Thursday
low
night.
on time, Dean, but I looked down here. You're betting against your Buffaloes this week.
Yes, because we are at Utah. The last time we won at Utah was 2012. John Embry. That's the same year that Fresno State beat Colorado 69-14. So I know a lot of you guys remember that game.
And you're taking the Bulldogs down there.
Yes, I will. I'll take the Dogs. Give me the Fresno State Bulldogs and 3.5 at Valley Children's against San Diego State. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be on the sideline holding a parabolic mic. I'm excited about it. Hopefully I won't tear a knee ligament or anything. So I got the call today. I'm excited. I'll be on the sideline. And then I got a couple NFLs on there. Try and take a bunch of favorites on the money line and then a spread as well. So, Scotty, we got about 15 seconds. Any last thoughts before we go?
All right, give me a prediction. World Series. Dodgers winning?
Dodgers
How
in
many
5.
games?
Dodgers in 5. You?
I think there might be some betting value on the Blue Jays
All
at
right.
nearly 2-1, but I think the Dodgers win the series.
We'll see you on Monday. This has been the Beam and Dean Show.